Hey, that's pretty bad. That one. 119 to 106. The Raptors lose to the Memphis Grizzlies and in a game that was not competitive. 13 points is the deficit at the end, but the Grizzlies had them at arm's reach. It was never really in question. They got dominated thoroughly in the paint, on the break, in a lot of the facets that the Raptors like to do their own damage and weren't able to do tonight. More on that in a bit. First, yeah, a little bit of house cleaning or housekeeping, I suppose it's called. There is a live podcast that will be happening on February 7th. And is at Rivoli, the Riv, I've been told. Myself and Lewis are hosting it. There's a bunch of people from Raptors Republic, some special guests, just a whole bunch of basketball talk. It's $20 to get a ticket and $10 for all-star subscribers, both of which come with a drink, and drinks are pretty expensive these days. Also, there's a 3-on-3 tournament, the 10th annual one of the Raptors Republic, puts on at the end of the month. Just Google 3-on-3 Raptors Republic. I'm sure that'll pop up, but I believe it's on the 27th. So stay tuned for both those things. And yes, lastly, or firstly, hey, anything, honestly, this is the Raptors Reaction Podcast. I'm your host, Samson Folk. Thank you for joining me. Uh, the last two I didn't do, and my apologies for that. The first one against the Cavs, I had an audio malfunction. Very unfortunate. The second game against the Clippers, I was on a flight and I wasn't able to do the reaction podcast. I did see the game, though. Not a good one either. And so thanks for sticking with me. These will be regular as they often are or always have been. Yeah, the Raptors losing games. Uh, I talked to people about this team. Some of them work in and around the league. Some of them cover the league like I do. Some are fans who I respect. Some are readers who I respect, listeners like yourself. And a lot of people think this team needs a big. And nothing will shove your face in the dirt of that fact like playing against Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams. And the Raptors thoroughly outbodied, outmuscled. There was a play where Pascal Siakam played in the fourth quarter when the Raptors were trying to make their run back into this thing. Pascal tries to play drop defense and does a pretty good job. He had a good time of it last year, too. The Raptors stopped the initial action, and there was energy expended there. And what Steven Adams does is Siakam lets up for a moment, right? And immediately he's pinned under the rim because the play got spaced out. Everybody pinched in initially, like to guard this play. Okay, there's a tag coming over, but they reset it, and now it's just Pascal who's in drop and Steven in the paint, and Steven seals him, like just shoves him in the chest, cuts him under the rim, and it's just like that's the death knell. You can't ask a guy like Pascal at his size to contain Steven Adams at his, especially considering what Pascal has to do all game on defense and on the other side of the floor. Even with the Raptors playing, I guess technically their biggest guy, Koloko, he starts this game, plays 12 minutes. Not a good game for him. Wancho, technically the starting shooting guard in this game, despite being the starting center and many others. Neither of them have a profound impact on this game. And as good as Scottie, Pascal, and OG tried to be, I think all three had moments. I think all three did things well. I mean, Scottie with, I think, 7 or 8 offensive rebounds in this one. Pascal finishing with 25 points, 10 boards, 4 assists. OG, again, pretty good defense, 16 points, three, three rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. But the thing about this game and the thing that OG talked about and that many people talked about in media, OG said, like, hey, I'm gonna be the guy who says I need to be better, and I'm gonna try and lead in that way. And that was after we talked about effort, and the effort question was kind of just coming and going, and I thought I would ask for more specificity from OG, like, hey, effort has to be coupled with stuff. What are you guys trying to do specifically? And he was like, hey, I'll be the guy. And the transition D has been really bad for a long time now. They haven't been protecting the rim. They haven't been shooting the ball well. All the hallmarks of a Raptors team are supposed to, I guess, incorporate effort. And when you, and this was the interesting thing about the Raptors at the start of last season was, and the thing that confounded many people was that the Raptors, were able to offensive rebound like crazy and still keep teams out of transition. Many people wondered aloud, how does a team do this? Is this tenable? Is this sustainable? Currently, it doesn't look sustainable. And I know that, well, the transition defense was just flat out bad tonight. Hit aheads were available. The Grizzlies had guys in numbers on numerous occasions that they probably shouldn't have had. And Nick Nurse was displeased with that after the game. It's what most of the writers were talking about. And it's tough to watch a team just get beat around and get beat down the floor. And they had no chance in this game. They had a couple nice little stretches. Gary Trent Jr. had some terrific shot making in this game. And I mean, really, really good. Pascal Siakam, I think Dylan Brooks is a fantastic defender who finished with 25 in his own right, or 24, I think, tonight. And they put Dylan on Siakam a lot. He's very strong for his size. He's very good at angling defenders into help. And when you have Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson Jr. there, that works quite well. He's also contesting Siakam, on these shots. He's also making Siakam feel his presence. And Siakam is being gapped by the rest of the defense otherwise. So it's very good team defense making Pascal work for it. And so Pascal, who struggled immensely with Jaren Jackson Jr. last year when they played at the end of November without John Morant, we're looking at a guy that as soon as he got Jaren on him twice, he got to the free throw line and he scored the other time because he had figured out, okay, I know how to attack Jaren. But he had a tougher time with Dylan plus the help side principles of the Grizzlies. So they had a really great, I think, defensive scheme. The Raptors missed a lot of open threes in this one. I think they end up shooting 10 for 28. It's not the worst they've done. It's not the best they've done. I mean, we're looking at a team that we want to shoot better, that everybody wants to shoot better, and they miss shots, man. And they certainly didn't create a ton of them. Pascal Siakam, as far as guys creating shots, he was fundamentally the only guy doing it at a high clip. Malachi had some nice stuff coming downhill, but this is a team that, as far as offensive juice, did not have a lot. Even OG, who there were some drives that are really liked and really appreciated. Most of the successful ones came on second side action. So it's just tough, man. And when I was talking to Nurse after the game, and I asked again to be specific, like, hey, you guys used to allow a lower frequency at the rim last season. They were 13th, and now I think they're 22nd, perhaps 23rd in how often they let teams get to the rim, and they're allowing a higher percentage there. And this is kind of what everybody's been talking about with the Raptors by, being hamstrung offensively. Is the defense tied to try and get that going so they don't have to play in transition on the other side, like the chicken or the egg? But I asked him, what's happening? Are the rotations later that you guys are making to the rim? And basically he cut me off. He had heard enough of it. He was like, we're not scoring and we have to play transition defense. We have to get back on defense, and we're not letting our defense get back and get set and do anything. So we can't score the ball. But he was he was upset answering the question, so I didn't get a follow up. But I think he's talking about the same thing that a lot of the fan base, a lot of the people have been talking about with the Raptors, and it was certainly the case against the Grizzlies in this one. My goodness, the Raptors, they didn't have an easy job of any scoring in this game. And, try as Pascal might, try as Gary might, try as OG to some degree might, Chris Boucher, getting after it on the offensive glass, being present as a cutter, that kind of stuff. The disparate pieces of talent, never coalescing, just existing separately and kind of punching in points when available. That's not going to do it against the Grizzlies, and it certainly didn't tonight. And the Grizzlies had their way going the other side. I mean, John Morant could not be stopped at the point of attack. Leak outs, hit aheads, him pushing the ball himself in the half court, getting downhill, 17 assists at the end of this one is a piece of cake for him. And yeah, the Raptors, they just couldn't hang. They lose this game, and they started to pressure the ball. They were a bit better for moments in time. They made their little runs, but and they gave it their all for moments, for stretches. but it was not a sustained effort. And this is kind of the thing with this team, is that a lot of things haven't been sustained efforts. 15 and 20, there have been a lot of performances this season that I'm sure will leave a lot of people wanting, and for good reason. And the Raptors getting absolutely bodied in the paint, getting beat down the court, and having very little recourse to try and create offense to keep pace with all of that. In fact, having virtually none. It makes it for a tough watch. I hope the people who watch this game with Jaren, with Dylan Brooks, with Jaw, with Steven Adams, I mean, hey, I hope you enjoyed the hell out of this game for that. And so some of Gary's shot making, some of Pascal's incredible open court maneuvering, let's say. But this is a game where the team, many people I know root for, the Toronto Raptors, got thoroughly outclassed. And in this one, not close. Fun little tidbit for the people on the podcast. You don't get to see it, but for the people watching on YouTube, you get to see a piece of the outfit I wore that Gary Trent Jr. complimented after the game. So if that if that makes me seem any cooler in your eyes, excellent. I'm trying to curry as much favor as possible. Um, the Reggie Evans Award winner, I got to give it to Scottie. 7 offensive rebounds, classic Reggie Evans type of performance. The 4 assists, the 3 steals. Scottie, it's it's tough with his game right now, and this is what John Morant talked about afterwards. I walked in on half of that after talking to the Raptors players. Adam was asking Ja about Scottie's second year struggles, and if he had any, I guess, opinions on that from his own point of view. And Jaw was like, "Well, I took a big leap in year 2," which I thought was funny. And so Adam probed a little bit further, and when Jaw was walking out of the room, he said he's special. He's going to be all right about Scottie. So take that for what you will, for anybody who is perhaps anxious about Scottie's development, etc. But Scottie's had a tough year. There's been things you can tell he wants to do on the floor that the skill development has been lagging behind somewhat. And then in some cases, we're looking at he can't do things physically that at times I think everybody knows they've seen before. And he's been a little bit hobbled. He's been dealing with stuff. The organization has acknowledged that. He doesn't really talk about it, but everybody asks Nick. Nick says, yeah, he's dealing with something. Everybody's dealing with something. Then he takes a game off or so. It's just tough. And to see a guy go out there and against that front line, 14 boards, or sorry, 10 boards, 14 points, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a really tough start to the game, going out there and kind of pushing through in the second half, even if the game was out of reach, just kind of supplying the Raptors with some buckets on the interior and a little bit of playmaking, and also being able to pound the glass. It's nice to see. As tough as these games are, you have to, especially with the young guys, you got to be able to take some positives away. And if the season keeps going this way, where they're losing more often than they're winning, and maybe that sees them fall at a playoff spot, that I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they probably should, considering who's on the roster, try and upgrade the roster so they have somewhere to go. But if they're just losing games, my coverage will not just be this holistic look at the team. I'll be more heavily focused in on the younger guys on the roster and the steps they're making and all that kind of stuff. And Scottie, he continues to make small steps, even if he's taking steps back in other areas, dealing with health, all that kind of stuff. He continues to grind. The top quick reaction comment is from Mark Booth. Quote, "Punked in your own building. The things Brooks got away with would never happen in the 80s and 90s. Where are Matt Barnes and Oakleys of the world?" End quote. Um, I mean, Dylan Brooks is liked quite well off the court. He's like a nice guy. He gets along with a lot of people. I think a lot of NBA players don't have the animosity for fellow NBA players that fans might have. And you can understand why that would be, is because they understand, when we just watch as fans, or, you don't ever talk to these guys or see these guys, they're just like this, uh, you know, um, a figure on the screen who, in Dylan's case, can, come off as quite villainous and antagonistic to opposing fans. And when we look at how the guys, they interact with Dylan Brooks, they know what Dylan Brooks is like. He's a great shit talker. He's great at getting under people's skin. It's a part of his game. He got under Pascal's, forced him into a tech, forced him into fouling out. Like, that's part of his shtick. And it's very tough, I think, to get established players to kind of get into those situations because, like, Oakley and Barnes, for example, as much as like the tough guy thing goes around, they were certainly, people like those stories, and for good reason. They're fun, but people wanted them for basketball skill mostly. I think that's an important part of it. Is there a Matt Barnes or an Oakley of the world? I don't know. Killian Hayes just slept Mo Wagner the other night. He knocked him out. Got 3-game suspension. And if you're saying you want somebody on the Raptors to take that 3-game suspension to knock out Dylan Brooks, that is not what I would advocate for. If that's what you're looking for, um, maybe mix in some UFC with your do dual screen UFC and Raptors going at the same time. That way you get a little bit of the cathartic violence on the other side. Uh, Mark, thanks for writing in. Listener, thanks for tuning in. Whether you got into this on the podcast, thanks for tuning in on the podcast. On the YouTube channel, thanks for tuning in there. You can like it, subscribe. Most importantly, subscribe at raptorsrepublic.com. And yeah, finally, thanks for tuning in. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.